I just remember like going to bed one day. I was like maybe 15, and my sister was in my bedroom that night, and she was talking about my family beginning to work for on an arranged marriage for me, which is like the thing that we do. And I went to bed, and I was like, something's wrong. My name is Nasser Mohamed. I go by Nas. I was born and raised in Qatar, and I'm an asylum seeker to the United States. I was born and raised in Qatar, and I was there till I was 20, 21, and then moved to the United States. I lived on the East Coast to finish my medical training. I'm a physician. And in 2022, I became an international gay rights activist, the first and continue to be the only publicly out LGBT person from Qatar. And I opened a foundation called the Alwan Foundation to highlight patterns of persecution of LGBT people in the Gulf states in the Middle East.
So I'd like to start by asking you a little bit about what it's like to grow up in Qatar. How is growing up in Qatar different than growing up in the United States?
I grew up very conservative, very Muslim, and memorized the Quran by the time I was 14. And in that society, it's like if I use analogy to the American audience, there was just a lot of analogies to Mormon culture, to what we had. And there are some things very similar to Amish communities. And it's like very closed, very conservative. You're in and out kind of energy going out. And they were just really set ways for doing things. And even like a growing up, coming out, speaking very publicly to the world about sexuality and gender and things like that. But then when I was growing up, we don't talk about sex. Nobody does. Gay or straight, like that was not a thing you even speak about. And they were, we grew up with the understanding that a marriage will happen even before you're 20 in a lot of cases.
Did you know any LGBT people growing up? Did you have any awareness of LGBT identity?
No, I haven't seen anybody that was like me. Like, I'm gay, I date men. I'm also genderqueer, which is another thing that is different. It's in a different dimension. People are talking about that, but it's your sense of who you are and your like spiritual, physical alignment. And that was also something I couldn't describe, but I just remember like going to bed one day. I was like maybe 15, and my sister was in my bedroom that night, and she was talking about my family beginning to work for on an arranged marriage for me, which is like the thing that we do. And I went to bed, and I was like, something's wrong. That was like my first connection to it, and I was like, something is just not right, and I'm just not in a world. I don't have the words for it. I didn't know the words for it in Arabic, and I was like, I just know, and my body was reacting negatively to what I was being asked to do, and I was like, I just know something's wrong, but I was really alone in it.
Did you feel a sense of conflict then?
Yeah, because there was just the truth that I hold, that I feel, and the truth I'm told, that I'm living, that I'm hearing, that I'm seeing. And that was like my conflict. It's like you feel like you're losing your mind because you know in your core something is, but you look around you and it's not there. And that was definitely like a moment that was really, really difficult for me.
Do you get the sense that your family maybe knew that you were LGBT?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there were comments. And then my parents did like see me, like even as a kid playing, like I didn't want to play with boys, and I was playing with the girls. I was playing with my female cousins and played with like dolls, and I just had that energy, that feminine energy, like growing up, and it was punished. It wasn't welcome, and they did feel like they needed to intervene to make sure that I am as they want me to be. So there was definitely in all the spaces there was that energy of being like, you need to be a certain way, sometimes spoken, sometimes expressed, and sometimes it's a look where you know you can't.
You don't have to answer this if you want, but when you say punishment, what do you mean exactly?
Sometimes physical. Sometimes it's by excluding you from spaces, and sometimes it's like very like there is a culture of like trying to break somebody through shame of how you're failing your culture, you're failing your family, you're failing everything that is built by being something that is just not in that story.
So I'm curious, when you mentioned earlier that you didn't have the language to describe what you were experiencing, when did that start to change?
So I there were so many moments, and some of it is like a little blurred to be quite honest, but there were some distinct moments. And when I was in medical school, I went to Cornell in Qatar. They have a branch in Qatar. They built an educational city. And that's when I started learning English. I started learning English in high school to get admitted to Cornell Medical School. And part of that journey was traveling back and forth. I went to Ithaca, upstate New York, went to New York City. But then I traveled for research projects, and I was selected from Qatar to go and present. So now I go from Qatar, still very conservative Muslim. And maybe I was like 21, I think. Yeah, I was 21. And I went to Vegas, and that was just like a lot. Walking into like the different world, right? So I go from Qatar, from that setting to Las Vegas, and I'm walking through the lobby and one of the casinos, and in my head, I was telling myself, still in denial, like still haven't really fully touched me and my soul and everything that I am. And as I was there, I was like, oh, you need to not look at women. Remember, like, you need to avoid temptation and all of these things that I was telling myself as like a conservative Muslim. And then I walked into the lobby and there were like go-go girls dancing on the poles. And I was just shocked that there was zero lack of temptation. Actually, there was no temptation at all. I was like, hold on. Something is not right. And then a guy was walking through the lobby and he bumped into my shoulder. And that was like everything was on immediately. So I checked into the hotel, and then I was like, how does one begin searching what happened to me? And I was like, what is it that happened? And I was like beginning to like initially it was just like Googling very like surface level statements being like, I don't like women, or like, I found a guy attractive. And I just was like, what happened? And then I landed on the word like gay, and I was like, okay, how does one know? And I just kept looking things up, and then learned that there are gay bars in Vegas. And I was like, I have to go find out. So then I was very nervous because alcohol is illegal, like where I grew up. Or being in a space where alcohol is served was also not okay. And I had never been in a bar or a club. So, and then my first one was going to a gay bar alone in Vegas. And all of it was just, I was like, what does one wear when you go there? Like, how, like, what do you do? I don't know. Like, never been. Okay. And I had my Qatari ID with me. And I'll tell you, like, a real moment I had. I was so afraid to show my passport to the bouncer. And that was like another real thing we had. The state like watches us, and stepping on a line is for anything what is punished. And I was shaking when I was showing my passport at the door. And we can't take any national ID without our traditional garment. So I was in my full Qatari garment when I showed my passport at the door. And I was just waiting for something to go down. I don't know what I thought was going to happen when I showed my passport. But the guy looked at it and looked at me and was like, go photo. I was like, okay, that wasn't as bad. And then I walked in, and then the first thing I saw was a go-go boy dancing in a Speedo to We Speak No Americano, or whatever the song is. And that was my like sexual awakening moment, I guess. And I looked around the space and I was like, I think that's what it is. And I immediately left and went back to my room, and I broke down fully because I just witnessed me, and I know that it's not safe home. And then that was the beginning.
So is that basically when you discovered even just what being gay was as a concept? Like
Yeah.
So you hadn't known of it before, but you still knew enough to know that it was forbidden, that it was going to be a problem.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
It was going to be a problem because there's just like an inherent societal problem with like not conforming to the whole thing. And this is so far out from like, right? Like even if you're a straight man in Qatar, you can't date. You can't go and approach a woman. And that can also be punished, and it was punished. Maybe less now than it was at the time I was growing up. But it was punished. And even if you want to marry a woman that's not a Qatari citizen, the government has to give permission. And so, like what I'm talking about is like so far out of that, so I'm like 100% it will be punished.
You realize that you're gay, and how does that affect your relationship with your family?
Oh gosh, it was just like trying to continue to hold deep love like for them and love for me at the same time, and it's just was so hard. And they could not understand that me wanting to protect me was not an offense to them, or to break shame to them, or to their family, or how they would be viewed in society, or even more now, putting them all in danger in front of the state by daring to speak. So there was always that push and pull, and I was just very religious. I was extremely religious, and I was known for that, not only within my family, but like on society level. So I was actually a tough one to question about religion because I was considered like one of the most religious people, I was the most religious one in my family. And I didn't want to get married. It is for this reason. Also, I was in medical school, so I was like not wanting to begin their journey of having a family, like building a family, for all of those reasons. And then I started to slowly it's like, when you're in any relationship, and then there is this one point of tension that you just don't feel like vulnerability will be welcome. So it just slowly starts crumbling over time because you just can't authentically connect because there isn't true safety in that relationship. And that's kind of what like slowly happened.
Are you no longer in touch with your family?
No, I'm not. Till 2 weeks ago, when they were the target of Iranian missiles. And
Okay. We're all set?
Yeah, all set.
Okay.
So thank you for giving me a moment.
Of
Yes,
course.
I'll come back.
Of course.
And so the way my mom reached was very encrypted and very indirect, and it was through someone else. And just to tell you how afraid even she was to still reach out to me now. And she reached out when the Iranian strikes started against Qatar in retaliation to the US strikes. And which Qatar has never been in a war zone. Like, this is new. And I was surprised they reached out to me because people are afraid to reach out to me because I'm very public. And she said, through that person, she said, I never stopped following you. I have phantom accounts and I see everything that you're doing. And I was partially mortified because some of my accounts are quite rare and I didn't exactly want mom to watch all of that. But she was watching all of that. And she said, Mom and Dad love you and miss you. And it was painful, but I also said, I know this is hard for you to hear it where you're standing. But for it to take missiles dropping over you, to just be my mom, and for me to be your child, and for me to have to take asylum just to feel safe, and for us to be in a setting that you can tell me you love me without an encrypted way, it's wrong. Something is wrong where you are.
Do you still identify as a Muslim? What's your relationship with faith?
I am very deeply spiritual. I don't practice Islam. I don't practice organized religion. And in my view, our religion was used as a tool by dictators to control people. And I didn't like it.
When you look back at yourself, the conservative religious version, how does it feel?
Oh, I feel like it's just like, it feels like a dream sometimes. Like I just lived in such different worlds. I was speaking another language, like having a completely different rooms I was in and conversations I'm having. To me, what's different is that I have the freedom to believe or not in any religion. I have the freedom to choose for my body, and I have the freedom to choose who I want to have sex with. It's not chosen for me. And those three fundamental things were not true. And to me, that's the biggest difference, that I get to own those things. And I think, as we approach my story, a lot of people, it's foreign to a lot of people. I mean, I am in many different ways. But I am a soul on this earth with all of you. And the plea that I had to be safe, that was rooted in the freedom to believe, the freedom to choose for my body, and the freedom to choose how I love, touch all of us. And I think that's what a lot of different groups are fighting for now.
I'd like to dive into your foundation real quick. Can you tell me when you started it and just a little bit more about the work you do?
When the PR campaign for the World Cup was starting, I remember I was in a coffee shop here and having coffee, and I saw the first ad. They have a lot of money, so they can afford really good PR. And I was just like, sure, invite people to play soccer, but don't tell them what's not true. And then there was one segment with British officials, And a Qatari official, then they brought up the issue of LGBT fans and LGBT visitors and all of that. And he was like, so confidently came out and said, this thing you're talking about, this thing that is being LGBT person, is Western, and we are a conservative society, and we don't have that here. So you need to just respect our essence and our culture. And I was like, I am not gonna have a platform like the World Cup come in and erase my story and erase all the pain that I've been living and the bridge that I took. Because when I filed for asylum, it was so strongly contested. They were like, we haven't heard of persecution in Qatar. And it's true. There were no public stories. People's own families didn't hear they were in prisons, let alone foreign governments. Then I started reaching out to organizations first. And I reached out to so many, the most prominent ones. From the Human Rights Watch to Amnesty International to Outright International to like everybody that was willing to speak. I reached out to everybody. It's like help never reached us. And then when I was in rooms, and I'm not gonna like go on directly like attack some organizations, but even when I presented to some prominent LGBT organizations, international ones, whose entire mission statement is to shed light on what happens to us everywhere, they sat in front of me and said, but how is this going to create change? And I was like, do you want me to really just run you through, like now, how the entire civil society is gonna change just for you to speak to me and share my truth and not let it be erased in this moment? I don't know what the path looks like. I don't know. And I don't think any of us do. But as like from where I'm standing right now, I am gonna take one step, and it's to witness the truth and not let me be erased. And I asked all of them, is there an organization that is taking on the Gulf states? And the answer is no, it's because of their money. Go up high enough, and there is a financial relationship with Qatar that people don't want to compromise, and they would never fund an initiative like that. I closed my practice, I liquidated my retirement accounts, and I opened it myself.
Can you tell me a little bit about what life is like for LGBT people in Qatar? What are the consequences?
Yeah, so it can be from anything from we're gonna look the other way when you're powerful enough and nothing happens. Or it can be you will be approached at a coffee shop while you're having coffee, and somebody dressed in civilian clothes will say, we need to speak to you outside. They will take you out. They will ask you a couple of questions and you'll be taken in. You wouldn't be allowed to make phone calls. Your families wouldn't know where you are. You're not allowed to have legal representation. You're taken to a place with them under the Ministry of Interior of Qatar that is not public. And you would be brought in prisons underground. And if that tends to happen to people that are trans presenting or genderqueer, and the crime that would be witnessing would be having a tinted moisturizer on or any kind of makeup on their face, and they would wipe it with a makeup remover and literally have them take mugshot holding it like it's the crime, the weapon of their crime. They would then beat them. They would strip them down to see what else they've done to their body to change it. They would then subject them to various forms of abuse and detention. One of them, I interviewed a lot of them myself through my foundation. With the Human Rights Watch, we published one report with the Human Rights Watch in October 2022. And the United Nations, Qatar sits in the UN, and they have They signed treaties with the UN to not violate certain international laws in detention. And when this group look at the sign, because they're supposed to have the signs about your rights in detention, they would tell them these are my rights, and they would say these are for human, and you're not. So they take them all away, and they go from taking their medications away if they're on chronic medications. They would deny them medical care. They would put them in rooms where they're not allowed to sleep in beds, so they sleep on concrete. They would begin subjecting them to state-sponsored conversion therapy. And then some of them stay there for weeks, some stay for months. And when their families reach looking for them, they wouldn't know where they are. They actually tell them they're not there. And then when they leave, they force them to sign a document that says nothing happened. And if they are to speak about it, them and their family will not be okay. So a lot of them leave and come up with stories to their families about where they were, because they can't tell them what happened.
Are you in touch with LGBT people in Qatar?
Okay, I'm gonna play something for you. And here, you will have to alter the voice, and then you will have to remove their names.
Okay.
But I'm gonna give you an example of how people reach out to me. Somebody reached out on my way here, and somebody new.
Okay.
But just to give you an idea of what it looks like.
مرحبا دكتور ناصر. أول حاجة أنا ماني موجود كثير صراحة في السوشيال ميديا. I'm transgender transman. أنا جدا أحب أتابعك وأتابع دورك. أنا كاتب مؤلف ومؤسس إدارة نشر للمونسية. يعني زي ما تقول إيش أكتب كثير باللغة العربية بس طبعا أنا أتكلم باللغة الإنجليزية. I'm a survivor from my family. أنا ناجي من الاضطهاد والتعذيب اللي واجهته. يعني أنا هارب من مصحة عقلية للأسف. أنا سعيد جدا إن أنا أشوفك أنت وطارق بتتكلمون بصراحة. أنا حاليا اليوم تمام. أنا خلاص أنا في دولة مختلفة في أمان كذا. حبيت إني كذا جلست أفكر مع نفسي أكلمه ولا خلاص أعتمد على البلوك اللي أنا معطيه البشرية.
I get those every day from LGBT people in the Gulf states, because none of us is visible. So that when I was alone, was telling I was so alone and what happened to me, there's so many people that have that. And now Alwan and me is for everybody that touches something within them that knows different. There is one other place where they know it's true, that it's not only within them. And just in 3 years, Alwan's country conditions reporting that we published was used to grant asylum in all 7 continents in asylum courts because it's evidence.
Can you tell me a little bit about the progressive reception you've experienced in the United States? You've mentioned there's been some conflict, and I'd love if you could just tell me a little bit more.
So, one example I had was in one interview, a person came and asked me what happened to me, and I told her what happened, just as a matter of fact. And she said, "Don't you think what you're saying is Islamophobic?" And the conversation was in English, and I was really shocked during that interview. But also, I was quite entertained that an English-speaking person is speaking to me about Islam as somebody that excelled in Islam. And I can tell you what Islam is. And there is a difference between faith and practicing faith and allowing faith to be forcefully exercised on other people. Freedom of religion is the freedom to use that spiritual practice for your own alignment, to find peace, and I will fight for that for people. But it's not the freedom for you to take that and exercise it and force it on other people. That is not religious freedom.
What's your opinion on Islamophobia in the United States?
So there is Islamophobia. I'm suing Waymo. It's in the news. It's in the Chronicle. I wasn't allowed to use their products. And that decision was based on my name, Nasser Mohamed. I was wrongfully flagged on their US government terrorist sanction list, which I'm not on it. And when the enrollment algorithms flagged me that way, I wasn't allowed for 2 years to contest that decision. And people believed, unfortunately, that it's more likely to be true than not. And that is Islamophobia. It's coming to somebody from this heritage and assume the worst in them. Coming out and calling out abuse in a culture that happens to be Muslim, or calling out a dictator that happens to be Muslim, it's not Islamophobia. But then the way we engage about the conversation is just so it's not sophisticated. It's so surface level.
Would it be accurate to say that you've found ideological opponents on both the left and the right?
And allies on the left and on the right. Yes, I piss everybody off all the time, everywhere. But I also have people that truly, truly love me. And you wouldn't think there would be, if you look at our description on the surface, you wouldn't think these would be the people that love me. My most recent donor to the Al-Wan Foundation is a very conservative white Christian woman from rural California that wrote me a check. She's not queer, does not have queer people around her, and she is so deeply spiritual, loving human, and she listened to what happened with love. And that's true. Some of the people that recently attacked me a lot publicly are queer Arabs, because I went and challenged some of the tone that we're using to speak about our advocacy.
Okay, so we were just talking about how, so I suppose what I was telling you is that the problem with both political parties right now is the slightest bit of dissent is punished, or we were saying rather, and I'd like you to expand a little bit on that thought for me.
We just need really a space where we come in and talk and give the benefit of the doubt to the person in front of us. And there is just this weird world, because I grew up without social media at all. And then I also grew up with state-sponsored media where everything goes by the state. There's no free journalism. Then coming here, there's hope and promise. And that hope and that promise is one of it is freedom to believe and freedom to think and freedom to speak, right? It's protected, hopefully.
We've talked about authoritarianism in Qatar. You seem to be implying that we in the United States are sliding in that direction. Is that correct?
Yes. And I really worry for Americans. There are a lot of similarities when fascist groups decide to rise. And taking free speech away is one. Demonizing and dehumanizing many different groups of people is one. And there are many, 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 many other ways of that's manifesting here. And I am worried about us losing a promise that is so beautiful to the United States. That's the reason, of all the places in the world, I chose this place to be my home.
We've talked about what you've left in the past. Is there anything that you've actually kept with you or retained in your value set from Qatar?
Yeah. There is like a thing within Qatari society, and it's a concept of generosity. And I know it sounds weird coming in to after saying everything I said, but it's an idea, even though we're not meeting our own selves with it as a society and as a family, we're taught to meet other people with it, like with unconditional, open generosity and love. And to me, that is very Qatari. And to me, that's a very deep cultural thing to go. And when you witness difference in a different society or in a different human, you approach it with love first. And that I still hold very deeply.
How could that be? Because it's so contradictory.
I know. It is. They're doing it to the world, but not to their own selves. They haven't given their own selves that generosity. We are your children. We are part of your families. And you didn't protect us. So how do you measure your success? Because we measure your failure by the number of us that are seeking asylum away from you. And that's a truth that people struggle to just witness.
When you look at your Qatari identity and you look at your American identity, what are the qualities from each side that you hope to reconcile?
To bring them, like if I bring the best in each, the best Qatari traits I have that I hold and I continue to hold is you meet strangers with radical love that are different from you, and you would put food on their table before you feed your own self. Even if you would literally give everything you have to host somebody else. And that selflessness is something that is very Qatari, and I hold. The thing that is American to my identity now is to be brave, to witness yourself and things just the way they are. Even if they break stories and narratives about what you believe, be brave. Look at things the way they are. Be capable of change. Let your own idea of what a civil, loving society can look like when somebody is in pain. And breaking fixed systems that are hurting people to protect and build a new world where people are safe is what's American about me that I love and hold.
Is it fair to say to be American is this to aspire to positive change?
I think it is, and it is to witness radical truth. And I think about like why even like what people escaped when America was formed. And it was to escape fixed worlds that were like based in belief systems where people were not okay. And this is where, and a lot of us over time and across the world fled to that hope. And I hope we don't become another version of hate that we all escaped. Because the truth of us, of people, of humanity, is not one truth. We need to just hold a space where different versions of it can be.
My last question is if our chairs were reversed today and you were the one conducting the interview, is there something I should have asked that I didn't ask? Is there a stone I left unturned here? And really that's my way of asking if there's anything you would have liked to have talked about here that you didn't get a chance to talk about.
I want to say, so one question that I would love for people to think about and hear is, well, is there something I can do? And the answer is yes. And I think a lot of people, and I heard from this, I literally in 1 week heard it from a very wealthy person that has massive global reach. And I heard it from somebody that is not resource at all, that's making it, driving like Ubers and trying to make it through life. And both of them told me, verbalized concerns about how things are. And both of them said, but I can't do anything about it. And I think both of them can. And that's the one thing that I think allows fascism to really grow, is for everybody to experience a sense of helplessness and lose hope and lack agency. And if you can like listen to my story and hear like one thing, is how you can. Each one of us can choose to protect. We're in rooms, we're in spaces, we touch lives and have different reach. And the smaller decisions we make everywhere in every room for ourselves and other people do matter so much. So you have agency in what's going on right now. And if there is a sense of lack of agency, visit that.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much. That was perfect.